tracks, 8 songs, and an intro, tight 30 minutes. Y'all, if you listen to this podcast, you know how I feel about that. You know I like the tighter albums. And I'm not going to get to how I feel about this album first. I'm going to kick it to Brian on this to hear how he's felt with it. I've sat with it more, and that a lot of that has been because I've had the ability to drive and listen to it, and I've done a lot of driving over the last 3 or 4 days. So I've really listened to this. I've listened to it on the headphones, on the train. I've listened to it in the whip. I've listened to it in the crib. I have a variety of listening options sitting with this album. But Brian, what do you think about An Evening with Silk Sonic?
I, like you, was looking forward to this because I hold Anderson .Paak in particular in very high regard. Bruno Mars as well, though I'm more of an Anderson .Paak guy. As we talked about, Malibu was my album of the year whenever that came out. Feels like so long ago. And I enjoyed it. I have one skip on the album, I will
Ooh.
say. A lot of people, I saw that they were saying they had no skips, and then I saw other people saying, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was kind of not a parody, but not really not really what they envisioned when these two paired up, right? And I'm not going to go necessarily track by track here, but I will say that Leave the Door Open continues to be a standout for me. I played that a lot when it came out. I thought it was a great record. Thundercat and Bootsy Collins joint After Last Night. Dex, that is one. That might be my favorite on this whole album when I listen to it. Like, Bootsy Collins has a song in Grand Theft Auto, and like for whatever reason, the last 8 years or so, I've periodically sort of exposed myself to Bootsy Collins ever since because I had known of him growing up, but not like that. And then when you hear somebody in a video game, at least for me in particular, like it sort of introduces you or makes you want to introduce yourself to that person in that sort of space. And then there were a couple other joints that I really liked. I think Put on a Smile was a really strong one too. But yeah, look, I thought it was very good. I thought it was very enjoyable. I think that this is one of those projects that people are going to like. And I think this is going to be one of those projects that some other people are going to be overly critical of, in certain spaces because of what they want it to be, and it doesn't quite represent something, I guess, to everybody's standard. For me in particular, though, like I enjoyed it. It's a very good listen, and I definitely come away with it being like, okay, I definitely want a second one because I feel like there's more to do, right? I feel like there's another level that this can even get to, particularly with Anderson .Paak, maybe perhaps leading the way a little bit more on some joints because it does feel like a very Bruno Mars-ish album featuring Anderson .Paak at times, which would be, I guess, one of my criticisms of it, right? I'd like to see Anderson .Paak sort of be the front man a little bit more throughout the album because I just like him more, perhaps. So maybe that's just a taste thing for me. I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm more of an Anderson than Bruno guy, but I did really like Bruno Mars's last album, 24 Karat Magic, which in the same vein as this album was a pastiche album, meaning an album that sort of recreates a certain type of sound or from an artist or artists. Maybe in the way you look at Amy Winehouse's Back to Black, which is another fantastic album like that. Not
Woo!
nec- not
Yes.
necessarily. I don't want to compare the two. This album, Silk Sonic's Evening with Silk Sonic by Silk Sonic, does not have, I think, the lyrical depth that a Back to Black has. But I don't think this album was necessarily supposed to be that. I've seen that somebody's criticisms that they wanted some deeper songs about love. There seem to be two guys exploring a sound from a time that I actually really love. So that's actually one of my big connections with the album. I love this sound. I love the classic soul sound of the late 60s, early 70s. I love the instrumentation. That's why Leave the Door Open. The drumming on this album to me by Anderson .Paak, which if you are a fan of him, you come for that, is fantastic. I think it's really, really good. I'm with Brian on that. If there's one criticism, I think you would like to see a little bit more AP influence in this. Brian, did you tell me what your skip was? What was your skip on the album? I didn't hear that. What was the skip?
I'm pretty sure if I'm looking at the track list and I'm trying to remember, I'm pretty sure it was 777.
See, it's interesting because I feel like that song is the most Anderson .Paak sounding song on the album, right? It's really funky up tempo, but I can see how it's a little bit more of a quiet taste. I like it. I happen to like it. It's like a fun song.
I don't dislike it, but for me, it's just like I'm doing the Spotify test where it's like, all right, I'm streaming it, and then you put the heart on the whole album to begin with, and then I sort of remove ones that I don't think I'm gonna really revisit like that. And I also have just a shit ton of songs saved on Spotify where it's like I gotta be a little more, choosy with this
Judicious.
stuff.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I gotta eliminate something
So
from here.
so what's funny is I would agree that's probably my least favorite song on the album. So I'm with you on there. But it's not skippable. Honestly, for me, I play this thing all the way through. I'm not skipping it. It passed the cleaning test. If you know this podcast, you know my cleaning the house, playing the album test. I'm not going across the room to clean it. I don't think
Me
it's
neither.
bad.
Me neither. It's
I
not. It's
actually
not. It's not. It's not a skip the way. What's the joint that we always make fun of, where we talk about this stuff? It's not like a zone
uh
out on Godson, for example.
Jesus. Oof.
or
Oof.
what's the Jay-Z joint that we were talking about not that long ago? It was I was gonna say it's off Magna Carta, but
Well,
that
there's a
whole
lot
album
that's
is
there.
that whole
Or
album is arguably trash.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's all
like
niggas.
though,
But
like for the people to know, like those are some of the, if you're mopping the floor, if you're sweeping or whatever, and the song comes on, are you going across the room to skip the song?
yeah,
Okay,
I'm going for
that's the test.
zone out. I am going across the room. In fact, I'm probably deleting it off the album so I never have to hear it again. That's what I'm doing. That's exactly what I'm doing. Back to this. I've really enjoyed it. I love listening to all the way too. It's such a good vibe. And I think this was a point I heard Bomani Jones make on his podcast upon the review of it. People who've criticized the lack of lyrical depth or them not taking it seriously. This is an album where two guys are having fun with the sound. It's fun. There are lyrics in songs that are a little bit silly, and I like it. I enjoy it. Girl, you smell better than a barbecue on skate. Really, like it's not meant to be taken so seriously, and I like that it's just a fun album. And sometimes things are great for what they are. This is a good album to vibe to. If you like that classic soul sound, like I do, you grew up, my dad used to be playing the Shy Lights and, Earth, Wind, and Fire. And there's all these other different people that you can hear sonically in this album. You're really going to like this album and the sound. And I just think it's a really good vibe. It's short. It's a great listen. I really love listening to it. I find myself, I can't stop playing it. It's just a really good vibe. And I enjoy it for what it is. It is not a great R&B album with lyrical depth, although I'll argue there aren't that many R&B albums that are like that. But I think that it's fantastic sonically. Like that's the one thing I think you can't take away from it. It's called Silk Sonic and Evening with Silk Sonic by Silk Sonic. But sonically, this album is fantastic. Like the drumming by Anderson is great. The instrumentation is good. The vocals are good. Where I agree with Brian in terms of Anderson leading maybe more with verses, and he did this on some songs. After Last Night, I think it's a good example of that, where Anderson's leading more, and then you've got Bruno on the bridges, where he really stands out and shows his powerful vocal ability. But I thought Anderson vocally on this is good. There's songs where you get a little bit of rapping, like Fly Like Me, which my daughter loves. She can't stop playing that on repeat. She absolutely loves that one. So I think this is a really good album. And I'm excited they delivered something good. I kind of almost wish they had just dropped it out of the blue, because I think what happens is you get people with their expectations for sound, or people probably want this to sound more like Malibu mixed with 24 karat gold. And I just love that these guys actually just went into an era and a sound and made this pastiche album that actually is really good. I think it's really, really good. In my opinion, this is the best project I've heard in any genre all year. This is album of the year status for me with this.
Woo!
Yeah, this is the
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This. I mean, there's nothing
Spoiler
else
alert
better.
for next month's rather awards where we do best non-hip hop album.
Yeah, I mean, there was something else I had that was there, and this passes it by, not by a lot, and we'll get to that. But this is kind of a spoiler alert for that. But I think this is my favorite non-hip hop album thus far this year, barring something else coming out, or when Adele drops, which I will take a listen to and hear that as well too. We'll see what goes on with that. But as far as non-hip hop, yeah, this has probably got the cake thus far this year. I'm loving the album, man. I don't really have too much to say. Now I know you read the Pitchfork review. I know you saw Brian.
Got it right here in front of me. Yep.
They gave the album a 6.4 out of 10. I think they're tripping. And I hate to say this, but sometimes when people do these stuff, like I want to know how much you know about this genre. Like how much do you know about classic soul sounding music? right? And for a lot of people who may not like the sound of this album, like if you don't love that sound, that's cool. People don't listen to music all in the same way. But when people review sometimes and say certain things, I just wonder how much they know about the specific genre.
This is also a recurring thing with Pitchfork in particular,
Yes,
and
we know this from you. We've
and
heard
and,
this.
and some people have said it's because the way they rate albums, it's sort of an aggregate score from all the people who rate them or whatever, which I don't like. I don't see how it makes sense though that most of your albums just land in that 6 to 7 range then. And it
Mhm.
seems they undervalue a lot of albums that people generally hold in pretty high regard. We've talked about this as it relates to King's Disease last year. We've talked about this as it relates to other albums. And to see this at a 6.4 is I would say I disagree. You know what I mean? I would say like if this was in that 80, 85 range, and if you wanted to go higher than that, that's fine. It sounds like Dexter is in
I'm
fact.
higher. I'm higher than that. Yep.
But like, yeah, then I would see that and be like, okay. But because I see 6.4 and I see Pitchfork, then it is what it is. And I've also seen projects like I'm trying to remember which album it was, but it was an album I enjoyed. And I went to look up the reviews out of curiosity to see what people were saying. And I would see like a 6 out of 10, but then the review itself is mostly positive, which lends itself to the aggregate score theory or whatever that we were talking about before. But I don't know. I was reading through the review and you know, I didn't really think much of it because it's a review for this album at a 6.4, and as I said, Pitchfork is a repeat offender in this regard. No matter whose byline is actually on it, it just seems to be sort of the same theme, and it is what it is. Pusha
I,
T had a bar for Pitchfork not that long ago, also, so I remember
I usually, I
that.
usually like don't when something like this comes out, movies, shows, music specifically. I generally stay away from reviews. Uh, Whether I like or dislike something, I like to sit with it for a while, and then I'll maybe go and look. So today was the first day after sitting with this album for
I'll
about four
listen
days.
first. To be clear, I'll listen
Yeah,
first,
I have
and
to
then
listen
yeah.
multiple times to see how I'm feeling about things. And it's funny. So one of the things that I do trust in terms of album reviews, or I will look at, is I tend to look a little bit sometimes at Metacritic. I will look at from time to
Yep,
time,
yep.
and I like to see like just the aggregate score of all different people who reviewed it. And so I just, as we're doing this podcast, I just decided to look up on Metacritic, which I generally like to see what people come together and they make an average score. The average score for Metacritic right now is an 88 from all the people that reviewed it. That's universal acclaim. And that's based on 9 critic reviews. And the user score, which Metacritic also shows, is a 9 out of 10. That's really on par with where I have the
Wow.
album.
Okay.
I have it in that sort of 88's fine, 9 out of 10 range is fine. It is not by means a perfect album by any means, nor does it have to be. For something to be really great and enjoyable music, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be really deep. I don't think so. Just some of the scores I see, Rolling Stone gave it an 80, New York Times gave it an 80, New Musical Express 100, Variety 93, Consequence 91, Entertainment Weekly at 83, and All Music 70. So yeah. Um wow, some user gave it a 0, and then they wrote their review in Spanish. I'm not going to Google translate that, but yeah, people are going to have different opinions, but it seems to thus far
I have an
being
idea
pretty.
of what that might say in
Say,
Spanish, though.
you help me out. I'll have to send that to you. People, it seems to be getting pretty good reviews overall. I just think there's going to be some people, based on expectations, they're going to want it to be this or want it to be that. But I think for what it is, it's really damn good, and it's really enjoyable. And this, I'm somebody, I might be a little biased. Again, like I said from the top, I love this sound. I love that era of music and that sound. So having somebody put a sort of fresh spin on it is really dope to me. Like that I like. And I look, one thing I will say, Brian, that you said is I want to see, I want to hear more from these guys. I think they got good energy together. I think they got good chemistry together. I think DeMille, who works with Bruno Mars as his producer, is really good. The production on this was great. I'd like to see more. It's funny, one of the last lyrics on the album, on what's probably might be my favorite song on the album. I really like the last song, Blast Off. I think it's a fantastic song. Um, they asked the question, can we take it higher? And it's like, yeah, I think they can take this higher. I think they can do better. I think they had fun with this, but they could still do something that's funky, that's soulful, and it could be deeper or put more of their spin. But I love that they had fun with this album and they went back to a sound that I think is really dope. So salute to Silk Sonic, man. I like what they did here.
And we talked about this being a pastiche. I do want to see. So Sky Zoo's done like Ode to Reasonable Doubt.
Yes.
I would like to see some hip hop artists, do like Elmatic when Elzai did it years
Elzai,
ago.
fantastic,
I
right?
would like to see people. It doesn't have to be like that, extreme or that exact, right? It doesn't have to be like remaking an album or a tribute to an entire album, but yeah, I would like to see, samples and guys sort of get back to that and things of that nature. Like this is obviously heavily influenced by that time, and sampling is something in hip hop that is not, where it was before. Like there are some people, obviously, like DJ Premier is always going to sample. Okay, there are certain underground artists. If you're affiliated with Army of the Pharaohs, you're going to have beats come to you that are going to be sampled often and influenced by the boom bap era, et cetera, et cetera. Joey Badass with Static Selecta, which we've talked to Static Selecta up here about. Like, I want to see, sort of sampling come back in that way as it relates to hip hop. So this album, the Silk Sonic album, helped me think of that too. Like, I want to see versions of this in rapping.